World powers gathered in Munich for the 48th G7 summit, and on Sunday the G7 leaders along with the EU representatives held a roundtable discussion as well. And like most high-stakes summits, the Ukraine-Russia war continued to dominate talks here. In a new concerted action to cut off Moscow's financial lifeline ahead of the meeting, world powers they agreed to ban gold imports from Russia. The Western powers they gathered at the Elmar Castle in the Bavarian Alps before they continued on to Madrid for talks with NATO partners. Now, the G7 will seek to close ranks in their backing for Ukraine amid the war while grappling with intensifying global fallout of the war, from soaring inflation to a looming food crisis and energy shortage. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, now in its fifth month, has mired the world in a series of crises. US President Joe Biden, who is on a 5-day trip to Europe, held a bilateral meeting with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. The two leaders vowed to stay united against Russian invasion of Ukraine.
We have to stay together, because Putin has been counting on from the beginning, and somehow NATO would and the G7 would splinter, but we haven't, and we're not going to. So can't let this aggression.
And for more on this, our correspondent, principal diplomatic correspondent Siddhant Sibbal is joining us live from Garmisch-Partenkirchen town, situated in Germany's Bavaria state. Siddhant, thank you so much for joining us. Can you just begin by bringing us up to speed with the key highlights of the discussion so far? Also, we know Ukrainian President Zelensky virtually addressed the G7 summit as well. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the first session of the G7 on day 2 has started, and President Zelensky is addressing the G7 leaders. He joined them shortly virtually, and we know that one of his key focus will be on getting more weapons when it comes to ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine. That is something dominating the entire summit. We know that yesterday when the leaders met, that was at the top priority. In fact, the German Chancellor talked about how there should be a united front against the Russian aggression. Now, the G7 will be keen to show a brave face amidst the Russian actions in Ukraine, but they really need to come up with practical ways in terms of first stopping the war and secondly in dealing with the food shortages. Remember, one of the key focus area has been how to deal with the food shortages and hyperinflation we have seen globally, and when the joint statement is released tomorrow, the finer details will be given. But the G7 is hopeful that the fact that they have invited the 5 countries from the global south, that will add to their weightage when it comes to the words coming from here, from Germany. And also remember that there is a statement that is being planned, that is still under discussion between G7 and the 5 invitees on resilient democracy. So that essentially can be something that Moscow will be keenly noting on.
Right, absolutely. Now, we know that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been invited as well, and India's presence, in fact, it has been deemed crucial. What can you tell us about India's participation so far?
Well, in short, about like 1 hour later, we will see the Indian Prime Minister landing here in this part of the country from Munich, and then of course the welcome will begin of the 5 leaders: India, Indonesia, Senegal, South Africa and Argentina. Now, essentially the G7 would be keen that these countries who are seen as heavyweight add to the weight of G7 at a time when of course the G7 has been seen as a group of limited countries, the Western dominated countries, and that is why the presence of these countries add to the entire G7. But the Indian Prime Minister will be addressing 2 key sessions focusing on climate change, health, gender inequality. And on climate change, it's natural that he will be talking about the initiatives New Delhi has taken, whether it's the International Solar Alliance or on a renewable energy front. So that remains the primary focus. But the fact that India has been now regularly invited, this is the 3rd time Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is present, is participating at the G7 summit, shows that it has now become essential perhaps to invite New Delhi. Next year, Japan will be hosting the G7 summit in Hiroshima, and it's given that Tokyo will extend an invite to New Delhi, given the close relationship and special relationship both countries share.
Right, absolutely, Siddhant. Well, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed with all that has transpired so far. We will continue to monitor this very closely with you there. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.